What's happening, guys? It's anti-feminist SJW liberal here, and I am here with a response video. This is my second one. I don't know if I'm gonna keep doing this in the future, but this is Milo Stewart. This is Milo Stewart, and I don't really do response videos, but when I saw this video, I had to respond to this. She or he, whatever the hell. It goes by non-binary, but that's not even a thing. You're either a male or a female. There's no non-binary. But anyway, so it says, is hashtag Black Lives Matter anti-LGBT? This is a really dumb video, and she has no clue. Here we go.
I have seen so many YouTubers talking about Black Lives Matter this summer.
Well, when you start burning down cities and cause extreme violence, who wouldn't be talking about you?
Topics like, why is it important? And why do we say Black Lives Matter instead of All Lives Matter? I really wanted to make a video on the topic without sounding like a broken robot talking about the exact same thing that everyone else on YouTube has been talking about, and without, of course, overstepping my place as a white person in this conversation.
Oh, here we go again with white privilege. Social justice at its finest.
So I decided that I wanted to respond to arguments that Black Lives Matter is anti-LGBT. I can't talk about what it's like to fear being the victim of police brutality, but I can talk about how police brutality affects my community.
How the hell does police brutality affect the LGBT community? I see no correlation whatsoever with the LGBT community and police brutality.
A lot of people seem to think that Black Lives Matter pushes their activism into spaces where it is neither relevant nor necessary.
Well, we think and say that because it's mostly what they do. Hint, last week in Milwaukee, when a black police officer shot a black man with a gun. Or how about when Alton Sterling attempted to pull a gun while he was resisting arrest? Black Lives Matter was on the scene with that shit, but no, they don't protest when it isn't needed.
However, I believe that we can't really have a conversation about LGBT rights without addressing race.
How the hell does not being straight have anything to do with race, you fucking pro-victim?
And we can't talk about police brutality without talking about LGBT rights. After all, a 2013 report from the National Coalition of Anti-Violence Programs details that 67% of the victims of anti-LGBT homicides are transgender women of color. The most recent of which was the murder of Raylan Thomas, who was killed on August 10th. There's this obvious connection between anti-LGBT attitudes and racism that just can't be ignored. Most often, when people accuse the Black Lives Matter movement of being anti-LGBT, they talk about this video of a Latina woman speaking at a vigil for Pulse victims, and the actions of groups like Black Lives Matter Toronto, which protested the Toronto Pride Parade.
First of all, Black Lives Matter Toronto had no fucking business at a gay pride event. There's no connection between Black Lives Matter and LGBT, especially the day after a tragedy against the LGBT community.
So I'm going to talk about those. Tiffany, the Latina woman from the Pulse Vigil video, was invited on stage to read the names of the victims and was the first one at the to mention the fact that most of the victims were Latinx.
Oh, well, wow. A bar in southern Florida is mostly filled with Latinos. What a surprise. I suppose that there should be somebody mentioning that most of the cops that shot in the Dallas shooting were mostly white in northern Texas, huh? That makes sense. And plus, what is this Latinx stuff? It's Latino.
Unfortunately, most people know her from this crappy footage from the vigil, where she was repeatedly interrupted, and the video seems to have been edited. Tiffany started her speech out by saying, "I was really nervous to get up here because there's a lot of white people in the crowd," and went on to say, "I thought I'd just take the moment to just list out some facts that many of you probably don't know because you're white."
Okay. And that's not racist at all, huh? Let's pretend something here. Let's say somebody went up there and let's replace all these words that say white with black. Let's say she made that speech. All of you liberal leftists, especially you, Milo, would be all over that. You'd be calling that, you would think that's racist. Okay? Everyone would go ape shit. But just because she said something racist against white people, you dipshit SJWs don't even acknowledge that it's even a little racist, do you?
Although the part where she talks about the facts that she wanted to share seems to have been edited out, or maybe she was just interrupted so she didn't get to say those parts. Either way, it's not.
Okay, I would interrupt the shit out of anyone who said anything legitimately racist against any race. Why would you listen to a racist? By definition, that little thing she said is racist, and I would not want to listen to a damn thing she said because I don't listen to racists.
Video. She also said, "As much as it is awesome that there's so many people here today, it's like, who are you really here for?" Okay, so obviously her speech wasn't worded in the most tasteful, politically correct way.
Oh, I see. So, since she said shit about white people and she's a Latino, it's not racist. But it's just not the best political correctness instead of not being racist. Give me a break.
But she did what she was asked to do, which is to speak from her heart. I totally
So her heart is racist?
understand the pressures of being a marginalized person who is pressured to word everything in a way that doesn't upset anyone. But the fact of the matter is that marginalized people are people too, and we have emotions and get frustrated. She was obviously angered by and trying to make a point about how most people talking about the Pulse victims ignored the fact that they were largely Latinx.
You know why nobody's talking about why they were largely Latino or Latinx, whatever the hell you're trying to say? It's because the shooter's motive wasn't about attacking Latinos. It was to attack the LGBT queer people. It was to attack gay people. I love how you attempt to victimize Latinos instead of considering an attack on the LGBT community. That is absolutely ridiculous. It was obviously not an attack on Latinos.
But she ended up getting repeatedly interrupted by people who were annoyed by her anger and who ultimately proved her point by saying that the vigil wasn't a racial thing. Ultimately, the conversation should have been both about race and about LGBT issues, since both communities were targeted by this tragedy.
Once again, Milo, race was not targeted. If you fucking looked at what happened, you would see it wasn't a fucking race thing. It was completely against the LGBT community. The fact that you try to make it a racist problem is fucking dumb. How do you eat shit for breakfast? Do you eat bullshit for breakfast? Do you watch bullshit news? What the hell is wrong with you?
The events at the Toronto Pride Parade deal with very similar issues. Black Lives Matter Toronto halted the parade until they had their demands met, which included things like increasing representation among Pride staff while prioritizing Black, trans women, and Indigenous people, and eliminating police floats at the event.
You know why Black Lives Matter crashed the event? Because they weren't the attention in the country. They wanted the full attention of the country at the moment. And those attention whores can't go an entire fucking day without being a spotlight in the fucking country news. They try to make something about them, even though the event was not about them. Exactly 1 day after a mass shooting against the LGBT people. You don't ever see LGBT people halting a Black Lives Matter event, just protesting the states that's making against the law for transgenders to use their respective bathrooms, do ya? No, you don't.
Personally, I don't understand how any of these demands are controversial if you understand the historical and current relationship between the police and LGBT people of color. In the 1960s, LGBT people were especially wary of the police as they could legally raid and arrest people for being in a gay bar.
Okay, that was the 1960s. As you SJWs love to say, it's the current year.
One such law that contributed to this was a regulation in New York that made it illegal to serve alcohol to homosexuals. The tense relationship between LGBT people and the police contributed to the Stonewall riots of 1969, as did the fact that the police could legally arrest patrons of the bar for reasons such as not wearing enough gender-appropriate clothing.
And that is because the radical Christians ran the government back then, okay? Your point is...
Today, police raids aren't really an issue, but LGBT plus people of color still face the issue of the police profiling them. In 2012, Mitchell Moore was attacked by police and called a faggot when he was just walking down the street. Additionally, the police often profile LGBT plus people of color, especially trans women of color, as prostitutes and use the possession of condoms as evidence to arrest them. Evidence and links and everything to all of this in the description if you want to read up on it. Given this evidence, I don't think it's unreasonable to request that police not have a float at any pride parade, since the presence of police can make LGBT plus people of color feel unsafe.
Okay, the presence of police at a parade is so you don't fucking idiots kill each other. The presence of police is to uphold the law and to make sure the public is safe. Who gives a shit if someone thinks they're uncomfortable or they're oppressed? That is definitely an unreasonable demand, and without police presence, there'd be people getting hurt and fucking killed.
It's also not unreasonable to expect that LGBT plus people of color be given more representation.
Oh, here we go again. It's always what the person looks like over their qualifications. If you want more colored LGBT community to be represented, then the LGBT people, the colored LGBT people, need to get more qualified for their jobs. You're not automatically qualified to be the president or be a mayor just because of how you look and if you're not straight. Sorry, honey.
Sylvia Rivera, a Latina activist and survivor of the Stonewall riots, warned in 1973 of Pride becoming a middle-class white club. And that's exactly what it's become. I've talked about my thoughts about Pride and its lack of representation and inclusivity in a previous video.
Again, it's not about inclusion of what they look like. It's about the qualification of the person.
If you would like to check that out. Ultimately, if you think Black Lives Matter is taking away spaces from LGBT people, you should ask yourself why you only want there to be one LGBT narrative.
There only needs to be one LGBT narrative because, I don't know, wouldn't that be segregation of the LGBT community? What would you have? Black LGBT, white LGBT, Mexican LGBT, Chinese LGBT? No. That's called segregation. It's not illegal illegal segregation, but that's still segregation. If you separate black LGBT, white LGBT, that's segregation. And Isn't that what black people and many of this country stood against before the Civil Rights Act? Isn't that what the liberals people stand against? That is the most dumb idea I've ever fucking seen in my life.
And why you think only white people should have spaces in LGBT communities. People in the LGBT plus community have different experiences based off of how they identify as inside of the community, what their race is, what their economic status is. And talking about these different experiences and issues is actually helping each other and being productive while listening to each other. It's not tearing us down. Black Lives Matter isn't taking away any spaces inside of the LGBT community. It's creating spaces that are often seen as unnecessary.
Okay, so taking over, like you just said in your video, taking over, putting a halt to the Gay Pride Festival for your own demands. That's not taking anything over, huh? Yeah, that explains your fucking hypocrisy. I'm done. I can't do that anymore. That's today's video, guys. Thank you for all the subs and the likes and the dislikes. Yeah, thank you for the dislikes. I love them because that means I'm getting into your skin. Proves I'm getting to you, feminists, SJW, Black Lives Matter feminists, or liberals, whatever. I don't know. I hope you see my profile picture in your sleep. I hope you think of my voice while you're sleeping. And I'm in your nightmares, liberals. I hope. Please hit that like button. I encourage